Michael Vartanian. I'm going to spend this hour or so with you for a training on Atmo. So a few words about this training in the beginning. This is a longer training. It is targeted at inventory users, people who actually use the inventory, who enter data, who check data, make different reports, make sure that the right data is reported to UNFCCC or wherever you're reporting it to. We have about 15 different parts that we're going to talk about, and the goal for this training is that basically at the end you're able to use Atmo yourself and prepare the national inventory using Atmo in a UNFCCC standard format and ready to submit for international reporting. So, as I said, an hour longer. Below this video, you will find links to specific sections. So we'll try to look at different topics one by one. And if you want to use direct links to specific topics that are of your interest, you're more than welcome to do that. So that's it in terms of introduction. So enjoy and give us feedback if you have any. So this section is about installing Atmo, and the first thing that we talk about before installing any software is its system requirements. The important system requirement here is, because we're going to work with a lot of data, we need a decent amount of system memory, and Atmo is asking for 4 gigabytes of system memory. This is a relatively modest requirement by today's standards, and office machines were equipped with 4 gigabytes or more. Some 5 years ago already. In some countries, this may still be a relatively good configuration, considered to be very good configuration, but generally 4 gigabytes is not that much. So another system characteristic that is important for Atmo, and actually any data management software where you need to work with a lot of data, with time series data in particular, is that you need a larger screen. Atmo will happily work without a large screen, on a very small screen as well, but you will be much more comfortable and it will be much more fun to work on a large screen. So that's basically it. I've said already that Atmo works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and for Windows, we actually can work on all supported version of Windows. So you should be fine on your normal office machine. So let's try to install Atmo together. System requirements is a little bit, and installation is a little bit of a boring part of the story, but it's necessary, so we know exactly how to install Atmo. So I have already downloaded Atmo. You probably have a link to download. If not, it was provided through different communications. If not, like under this video on YouTube, there is a link as well. So I have an installation package here called Spherical Atmo exit. I start it. Windows is actually warning me now that some spherical origins, GMHN and Kokage is trying to install an application on your machine. So it's a good thing that you see our name here. That means that the application was signed by us and wasn't tampered with while you are downloading it. So we run it. Once again, Windows is telling us that this is a verified publisher, and we agree to proceed. Click yes. The installer will ask us where to install it. The default parameters are totally fine. You can modify them, but you can also leave them as they are. The installation is quite quick. That's it. So you have Atmo installed. The installation package is not needed anymore. You can get rid of it. It's quite large, so it may be a good idea to get rid of it. So it doesn't take time, doesn't take the space on your machine. So you see Spherical Atmo added here under recently added, but when it's not recently added anymore, you will always find it under letter S, Spherical Atmo. It's here. If you want, you can also make a desktop shortcut to Atmo that will make it easier to find it if you don't have too many desktop shortcuts already. So let's start it. The first time around, the startup of Atmo is taking a little bit of time. So it can be up to a minute because, yeah, Atmo is making itself comfortable on your machine, setting up all of the working directories that it needs for work, and it will take a little bit of time for it to load the first time around. Yeah, next time it will start faster, but also like this this delay in initial startup is also repeated each time you update the version of Atmo. So like after automatic updates, you will see this effect that the startup of Atmo is taking a little bit of time. So here we go. The startup is finished, and you have the activation screen in front of you. So let's activate our copy of Atmo. My name is Michael. I will type my name. And my organization is called Spherical, and my email address is mg@spherical.pm. Yeah, so you can, of course, review the privacy policy and the license agreement for the evaluation license. It will require internet connection to read them, of course, because it may be links to our website. And it tells you that this is an evaluation version, and yeah, you know it already in any case. So you activate Atmo. Now that Atmo is activated. So I told you that this will be a boring section, so we're not going to talk about opening an inventory now. You probably want to look at how that works, but we are going to talk first about how to update Atmo. And in order to update Atmo, you go to Help About. You see different system information, various system information here. And when you go to Help About, it automatically starts checking for updates. This takes a little bit of time because, yeah, and it happens over the internet. So in order to update Atmo, obviously you will need to have an internet connection. Generally, Atmo is capable of working offline. It doesn't require internet connectivity for anything critical, but in order to update itself and to activate, it requires internet connection. So now we see that there is an update, and we will need to apply the update and restart. So Atmo closed itself, we'll run it again. And as I said, startup will take a little bit of time after the update as well. So we will need to wait this time, but not when you start Atmo, it will open quickly. So this is it. Atmo started. No activation screen anymore because it is already activated, and you can start using all its capabilities. But we will start talking about the capabilities in the next section, which is called starting a new inventory. Okay, so let us start a new inventory. Okay, I guess you can see my screen now. And we'll start a new inventory in a second. So one thing that I wanted to quickly mention is that the inventory is based on a certain metadata. So like, in order to start a new inventory, go to File, New Inventory. So the first thing that Atmo is going to ask you when you want to create a new inventory is the version of metadata that you want to use. The default is fine. It will basically default to the latest metadata that UNFCCC has provided. If you're interested in versions of metadata and in this whole business of metadata, you can go to the UNFCCC page. There is a page on the UNFCCC website. You can take the URL from here, and there are all of the inventory metadata versions that that have ever appeared or were used or not used. You can download the metadata and review it on the UNFCCC website. It's not something that a typical user would ever need. Metadata is basically describing the structure of data saved in the inventory and the structure of reporting tables. So each time UNFCCC updates something like that, calculations or aggregations or formulas or the look of the reporting tables, each time they correct an error in the inventory structure, they would update the metadata version. Atmo comes with a few recent metadata versions. In this light evaluation version, we have all the versions and subversions of metadata version 6. But as I said, it's a very technical aspect, and you don't really need to do anything about it. The default is fine. So then you need to pick a country or a party, and you can see that there are different countries that are defined. Actually, they are defined in the metadata, what countries can participate. You can pick any country here. Some of them are not really countries because, for example, the United Kingdom has three different entities in this list because there are parts of the United Kingdom that are not EU, for example, and they are reporting separately, and then there are many test entities that are also mentioned in the metadata. So perhaps UNFCCC test is not a bad choice if you want to just play around with inventory creation. And then the next thing that you are asked to do is to select reporting years. The most typical scenario is that you will report from the year 1990 to currently year -2. That's what is selected by default for you. You can actually add years or remove years that you don't like, but the default, especially if you are going to just play around with Atmo, the default is just fine. If you create, and here we go, your inventory is available. It's completely empty, no data whatsoever anywhere. So it's quite boring to look at it, but yeah, what I want. It's a newly created empty inventory. Yeah, I'm not going to show you how to use Atmo on an empty inventory, because the most fun is actually to look how it works with real data. So in the next section, we're going to load an inventory, a real inventory of some country, and play with it. So before we start, just one important thing that I wanted to note here is that the way developed countries, Annex 1 countries report, is not exactly the way UNFCCC publishes their reports. When a party submits their national inventory to UNFCCC, it consists of a few reporting tables, basically 95 reporting tables in the form of an Excel sheet. So you would have a bunch of 95 reporting tables for each reporting year. So it's basically a zip file of Excel workbooks for each year. And in each of the Excel files, there will be 95 tables. Yeah, for basically each CRF table will be included as a sheet in this workbook. In addition to that, the countries provide an XML file that is submitted along with the reporting tables in order to provide a machine-readable format for UNFCCC to process their submissions, put them into the data warehouse for further analysis, and so on. Unfortunately, UNFCCC is not publishing this XML file, which makes it actually quite difficult to analyze CRF data of developed countries. This may change in the future, but the fact is these XML files are still available to the public because they are obtainable using freedom of information requests. We have obtained many inventory files this way, and we are providing one of them, the UK inventory file that was obtained by using freedom of information request from the British government. But if you want any specific inventory files, you are free to use your country's, your favorite country's freedom of information rules and laws to request such files. In our practice, it's reasonably easy to get this file from the government. Actually, environmental information is even easier to access than any other governmental information. So let's try to open the British inventory file. We're back to the start screen of Atmo, and we click Open Inventory. And I have already downloaded the British inventory file here. We will talk a bit about the formats of this file because this is an Atmo file. It's British inventory already converted into Atmo format. You can find a link to this file and also to the British inventory file under this video, so you can play with it as well. I double-click it. It says loading. It will take a few seconds before it loads. Okay, let's put it on our screen. We are now in the British inventory. We are going to talk about this inventory file in the next section. So in this section, we are going to talk about saving your inventory and different inventory formats. We talked about that briefly in the previous section. So you have seen that we opened a file with .atmo extension. I will show it to you here. Yeah, GBR 2017.atmo. This is an internal format that we use for Atmo. It's its structure is open, but you usually don't need to interoperate with this format because there are better ways of interoperating with Atmo. The way we're interoperating with CRF Reporter is basically that we can, like using Atmo, we can also open the files that you can export from CRF Reporter directly. So if we start Atmo we want to open an inventory, you can select the format, and instead of Atmo, you can select Simple XML, which is the UNFCCC standard format. And in downloads, this is basically the file that the UK has submitted to UNFCCC in 2018. We can double-click it, and it will load this file. While it is loading, I will show you very quickly that that basically there is a very big difference in the size of the inventory file. So Atmo file is compressed, and it is taking less than 4 megabytes, whereas the British original file in XML format takes about 50 megabytes. In reality, inventory files can be even much bigger. It's not unusual to have a 300 megabyte or 400 megabyte inventory file in some countries. So when you are able to make the file 10 times smaller, it's kind of useful. And it actually also takes much less to load this file. So let's put it on the screen again out with this. So basically, you can open XML files, and if you want to save the file after you've opened an XML file, you can just give it a name. We can give it a name GBR 2017 and we click save, and it will say it's saving for a while because it needs to convert the format. It takes just a few seconds. That's it. The file is saved now. And then if you are working, if you are in an Annex 1 country and you actually want to take your inventory file, work with it in Atmo, there are many reasons to do that. We will talk about them in other sections. So if you want to take your inventory out of CRF Reporter, work with it, put it back into the CRF Reporter, you can do it by clicking File Export. So you can export into a simple XML file again. So you just write a file name. We will not do it together, but you can put your inventory back into the simple XML format and upload it into the CRF Reporter. The CRF Reporter will recognize it. We are going to go back to the question of working with CRF Reporter in section 14 later on. And now we are going to start working on our user interface. The most of the fun starts now. So user interface. This is what the user interface looks like. Let's go through it quickly. Rather standard things, menu at the top. We are going to talk about different items on this menu later. The category tree, it's basically the IPCC category tree. The only thing that we need to pay attention to is that these are not quite IPCC categories, because agriculture and land use change, and forestry are separate. And according to the 2006 IPCC guidelines, they should be in one AFOLU sector. The same thing happens with reporting tables. Like UNFCCC, CRF tables are at least they're numbered according to this numbering of sectors. So energy as one, IPPU 2, agriculture 3, LULUCF 4, and so on. No mention of AFOLU at all. Breadcrumbs. In order to demonstrate breadcrumbs, I will need to go further in the tree somewhere. So you can see that you always, like on all grids, you can see breadcrumbs, and these breadcrumbs are actually navigable. So the navigation is really user-friendly. You can quickly jump from one subsector to another. Data entry field here. We are going to talk about data entry a lot in this training. So you can enter data here. Important to know about the data entry is that there are line numbers, and in some places there are calculations. So there are formulas that are based on these line numbers, and you can always look at the formula for a calculated value. So white cells, like the convention is that white cells are there to enter data, gray cells are calculated or aggregated. So like on a white cell, you will not see a formula. On a gray cell, you will always see a formula displayed. Reporting tables, comments, and charts are located down here. We are going to talk about them a lot in subsequent sections, in sections 7, 9, 12, and 13. So once again, I want to reiterate that having a large screen is definitely an advantage for working with time series, because time series are long, and if you want to have an overview of the time series, you want to have a larger screen. And then you also have charts available at the bottom, as well as the reporting tables. We will come to that as well. And finally, there are 3 layouts like this, what I'm showing you, the tree on the left and the data entry on the right at the top, and reporting tables and charts at the bottom. This is the most commonly used layout, but there are situations where you want to see the charts in more detail, or other situations where you will prefer another layout. So Atmo provides for 3 different layouts. One is the standard layout, one is the one that you are seeing now, where you have the data entry interface and the reporting tables and charts at the right, basically side by side, horizontally, and the other one is when the charts and reporting tables pane is completely hidden. So that's interesting for larger data entry sheets like this one, like this first office. So the switch is here at the bottom of the tree. You can switch between these layouts easily. Okay, that's basically the general overview of the user interface. And with that, we're going to the next section, one of the most interesting one, about the CRF table mapping. Okay, the CRF table mapping. As you know, the likely scenario for the enhanced transparency framework and the common reporting tables is that the parties will use, like all parties will need to report in a similar format, and the baseline for this reporting is so-called CRF common reporting format tables that are currently used by developed country parties, by the Annex 1 parties in their inventory reporting. The unique thing about Atmo is that Atmo integrates data entry and reporting tables so that they can be worked on at the same time. So let's review the process a little bit. You have the data entry tree, you have the category tree, sector and category tree, and at the leaves, at the lowest level of this tree, you would have data entry sheets like this. So I'm now in IPPU sector, category 2A2 line production, and I have data entry fields like this, where I can enter my data. Then this data is getting into different aggregations and calculations, and eventually it ends up on reporting tables. The reporting tables are some 95 tables that are defined by IPCC initially, but then UNFCCC process modified them to their liking, and currently the CRF tables have quite a bit of difference from the standard IPCC tables. So sometimes data entry directly, and sometimes some aggregations and calculations that happened on top of the data entry are getting into the CRF reporting tables. So when we are working with these tables, we have usually we have two kinds of questions. First is like, if I'm on this cell, if I change this cell, how will it affect my reporting tables? Which reporting tables, and how it will affect my reporting tables? And the second question, looking at the reporting tables themselves, is that, okay, if I have a number here, like, where did this number come from? Like, where is it from? How it appeared on this reporting table, and how is it connected to my data entry? Atmo is actually a unique software that answers both of these questions in a very, very user-friendly way. Like the first question, I'm looking at this data entry field, and I would like to know what kind of tables it affects. So I can look at the tables here at the bottom. There is a list of tables that are affected by my data entry in this cell, and I see the cell highlighted in red, and the red cell, that means that this is exactly this value from 1992 is mapped to this cell in the reporting table 2.1a HS1. Okay, some tables are named in a very complex way. Let's look at something simpler, hopefully. So if we go to energy industries and we want to see, for example, do we have emissions from energy industry? So obviously we have emissions from energy industries. We can see that it affects the table summary 2 and it's table 10S1. Or if we go to transport, we can also see that entry in our data entry fields affects a few tables. So you can see that some highlighted cells are highlighted in red, whereas some other cells are highlighted in pink. What does it mean? It means that, like, when it is a red mapping, it means that it's exactly the value we currently selected in data entry. So we click anywhere, we will see exactly the same thing on the red mapping in the reporting table. Sometimes the same field is mapped to different tables, but in any case, red mapping means it's exactly this value. And what is then the pink mapping? The pink mapping is an affected value. So we can take a look at emissions again. We go to emissions. We can see that, that's a bad example. Let's look at, I don't know, CO2 emissions. So we have a fair number of reporting tables that this the cell, the currently selected cell affects. We know that this is affecting table summary 1, AS1, but also it affects table summary 2. And here in table summary 2, we have a red mapping, basically the same value that we selected on the data entry side. And we also have a pink mapping, which is basically a total of this value and other values. So basically, if this value changes, this value will change as well. It's not directly affected. It's not like a direct mapping of this value. It's basically an affected cell. So now now that we know about like any cell in our inventory in the data entry, we know exactly how they affect our reporting tables. Let's look at the second question, the other way around. Now, I know that, okay, here I have a value for other sectors, and there is a value for that. I have no idea where this value came from. So I can double click the value, and this value will be shown to me and selected in the data entry sheet. So it goes both ways. You can see how your data entry affects reporting tables, and you can see where in data entry can you find the entries that are mapped to any cell in the reporting tables. Once again, what I have shown you just now is a unique feature. You will not find it in any inventory software that exists. Not in UNFCCC CRF Reporter, not in IPCC software, not in any other inventory softwares that at least we have seen so far. So with that, we're done with our section on CRF table mapping, and let's proceed to the next section of data entry and validation. Okay, so data entry and validation. Let's look at cement production in industrial processes. We are looking at cement production now, and let's see how we can edit some of the data entries that the British government has made in their inventory. So let's try to enter some negative number. So the system doesn't allow us to enter a negative number. You see a red frame around the cell. That means that the system will not accept a number like this. If you enter text or anything other than a number or a recognized notation key, the system will not allow you to do it. So this is how I enter the number. I can also enter a notation key. I can include elsewhere. Let me leave a number here for now. So the system knows what kind of values you can enter and what kind of values you cannot. So, for example, for documentation box, here it's a textual field, so you can enter whatever you want. Here, let's leave the test here. So for the documentation box, the system would know that any text is allowed. If you go to LULUCF, the system will know that in some fields like carbon stock change, you will be allowed to enter negative values as well. The number format is according to your locale, so you can replace commas with dots and so on if you prefer. Okay, so we have spoken about non-numeric negative and positive validation. So basically, the only thing that we wanted, we still haven't checked, is what happens if we want to paste invalid data. One important feature that we have and that many parties asked for is the ability to copy and paste between the inventory software like Atmo and Microsoft Excel. I'm not going to show an example of how you can copy paste between Atmo and Excel, but basically you can do it. And what I'm going to show you though is that you can copy and paste between different cells in Atmo. Yeah, it's exactly the same process with Excel. You select a range of cells in Excel, go somewhere else, go to Atmo and paste the data. Like you can see that the pasted range is highlighted in yellow. Yellow in this in pasting means that it has been pasted successfully. So if the background of the pasted cells is yellow, it's fine. Then let's see what happens if we try to do something naughty. So now I have copied a few numbers and notation keys and some text, and I'm going to paste it where text is not expected. So like this range that I'm going to paste contains text. I'm pasting. So here it will show me that it will highlight the pasted range in red, which means that the system hasn't been able to paste text in the cells, or for whatever reason the system was unable to paste the values here because they didn't pass validation. So if you are working on your data in Excel, perhaps one of the things that you can do very quickly with the help of Atmo is to paste this data in Atmo, and Atmo will tell you at least if this data is valid in the cell. So that's all about data entry and validation. And our next section is on comments and explanations. Okay, so the next section is on comments and explanations. And let me share the screen for you. So we are again in the cement section, and let us look at how the comments business works. First, we're going to write a comment. So in order to get to the comment, to comments, you can use two different ways. So you can just go to the comments tab at the bottom, click the cell and go to the comments tab at the bottom. Or an alternative to that is to click this light blue corner sign with a plus in the top right corner of this of any cell. You can click here and the comments are activated automatically. So how do you write a comment? You can see here that there are many kinds of comments that can be provided to the same cell. Talking to many parties, and all the time I hear again and again how they work on their inventories using Excel. The problem with Excel and inventories is that although Excel has a possibility to provide comments on a cell, but it's only one comment, one textual comment per cell. And according to CRF standard, a party should be able to provide multiple types of comments on the same cell. So Atmo provides this this possibility for you. So for any cell, you will have like official comment, party comment, user comment, and like two different allocations. Let's write some comments here for the official comments. We'll say these official. And then for the party comments, the comment we will say something like it's in our country. And for the user comment, we will say hi there. So now the cell that we're working on has 3 comments at the same time. By the way, you can see now that the light blue corner of the cell turned actually dark blue, showing that this cell actually has some comments assigned to it. And if you click on this corner, you can see a little pop-up window of that shows you the comments in like a brief form. But if for example you are on a reporting table somewhere else, you can quickly look at the comments, and if you actually want to edit them, you can click this this expand button and activate the comments pane. You know that some notation keys require a notation key explanation, and the notation key explanation is a kind of a comment. So because notation key explanation is a kind of a comment, we can provide a notation key for which notation key explanation is mandatory, which is either NE not estimated or IE is included elsewhere. So NE is a notation key, and you can see that here a notation key explanation comment type has appeared. That's all about the comments. And in the next section, we are going to look at data checks and quality control. Hi, me again. And we're going to talk about checks and quality control. So the important thing about Atmo is not only it gives you the possibility to enter data and to see how this data is going to come out on the reporting tables. It also helps you check that what you have entered is okay in different ways and different meanings of the word okay. So one concept that we need to look at is that we have a number of different checks built into Atmo, and each check is a mode. It's a mode of work, which means that when you have some check enabled, you are not using any other user interface. It's basically the same user interface that is augmented with the results of this check. Let us look at how to enable checks and what it actually means. So checks are available in the modes menu, and we have 5 checks enabled in your evaluation copy of Atmo. So let's start with the simplest one, the completeness check. you can see now that the tree on the left-hand side of the tree, you can see that yellow dots appeared. And these yellow dots are very important. These are the traffic lights of the quality navigation system that we have built in Atmo. And in completeness check, this traffic light is the traffic light works like this. Green means complete, amber means incomplete, red means completely empty. So these check marks are available on all nodes, so we can actually navigate from the top to the node where we have a completeness issue using these check marks. So it was amber at the root in the sector's totals, amber at energy level, amber in fuel combustion sectoral approach, amber in manufacturing industries. And so we go down to, okay, iron and steel, also amber. Here we have different kinds of fuels. For all fuels, the check says green, which means that these categories are complete. But for biomass, it's actually not complete. So let's look at the biomass grid. So here we go. We'll look at the biomass grid, and we can now see that these checks, the completeness checks, are available everywhere. We can see them on the breadcrumbs, on the lines, and on the cells. Like if you see a red corner, that means that the currently enabled check has failed. And let us see what kind of problem it is there. So you can see here the cell contains an IE. It's a notation key called included elsewhere, and this notation key expects a mandatory provision of a notation key explanation comment, which has not been provided in this case. Completeness problems like this are quite common. So, although this is like a final submitted inventory from the UK, it's kind of not unusual that there are issues with completeness. I guess that makes the work of reviewers more fun. But let's fix this problem with completeness. It says there is no notation key explanation. Let's provide a notation key explanation. Like we discussed in the section 9 about comments, what we can do is we can click the cell, go to the comments tab. We see that there is a notation key explanation comment here, but it is empty. So we add a notation key explanation, something along the lines of this described in National Inventory Report, section 2. We save the comment, and as you can see, the check, the red angle, the check failure sign has disappeared from the cell. So basically, you can deal with your completeness issues around across the inventory by looking for and removing issues with completeness like this. So let's put a number here. So like Now it's a number, so it doesn't require annotation key explanations. So the problem is also fixed. We don't see a check mark anymore. And with this one, let's use another neat feature of Atmo. Let's just get rid of all of the whole line. It is now empty. It's not complete because it's empty. There should have been no empty cells in the inventory, as we know. But it is quite usual that if there is a notation key explanation that's provided for some variable, this notation key explanation is actually available for the whole time series. So like if it's included elsewhere according to some sort of a methodology that is used in the country, it will be included elsewhere for all years. And the notation key explanation will also be the same for all years. So what we can do with Atmo is we can propagate notation keys. If you have the empty space on the right-hand side of the notation key, you can click this little icon that appears in the lower left corner of the cell, and the notation keys will be propagated along with their explanations for the whole time series. Let me do it, and I will click it now. You can see now that the whole time series has been populated with the same notation key, and all of them have an explanation that we have entered. And voila, we can see here that biomass is now complete. Good. So that was notation. Yeah, this was about completeness check. It's like the most basic check. One last thing that I wanted to mention about notation, about completeness check, is that for non-mandatory cells, empty values are allowed, so documentation box may be left empty. So yeah, although there is no value here, the completeness check will not have a problem with that. So now let's switch to the next check, and the next check will be consistency check. Consistency check is interesting. You can also see here that none of the sectors in the British inventory passes the consistency check the way we have specified it, and we will take a look at the reasons now. So consistency check is basically a check that like that the time series that you have are not jumping around too much. So let's take a look at 1A2F. I marked for myself as interesting. 1A2F. And go to, let's say, liquid fuels. So in this category, we see that the check is amber, which is totally fine. Time series may be changing due to fluctuations in the economy and whatnot, so that's totally fine. We see that the fluctuations are observed in the field of fuel consumption, and if we look at the cells marked in red, you can see that the consistency check is telling us that the value has changed by more than 10%. We can quickly look at the graph. Yeah, indeed, it is fluctuating quite strongly. I don't know why. if you are from the United Kingdom, probably you might know why this happened in these years. So in 2006 to 2007, there was even a larger spike in fuel consumption in non-metallic minerals manufacturing. But we're not here for that. We're here to look at how the check performs. So you will see cells checked everywhere where the value has changed by more than 10%. And depending on the guidelines that you use, you may wish to provide an explanation either in your National Inventory Report or directly here in Atmo for any spikes that you have in your time series. By the way, the sensitivity of the consistency check is actually changeable. So if you go to File Preferences, just a second, I was not very precise here. File Preferences, you will see that consistency check maximum change is a modifiable parameter. And for example, you can go from 10% to 20% as the maximum change for, that is not taken into consideration by the consistency check. Save it, and then you will see that many of the checks have disappeared, and only the most critical ones, the biggest ones, are still around. So that's it about the consistency check. It's basically time series consistency check. There are other checks that are available to you in Atmo. For example, there is this check of consistency between activity data and emissions. So we can quickly navigate to a problematic place and using our traffic light navigation system that we already know how to use. So now we are in 2.8.4.d other, and the United Kingdom is reporting gypsum production here, and here we see that the activity data emissions consistency check is reporting that non-zero emissions reported with no activity data. Indeed, the activity data, basically the amount of gypsum produced, is reported as NO, not occurring. And apparently there is there are some emissions that are reported for this year. So basically, the question is, how could there be any emissions that if there was no activity data whatsoever? There are also other checks. You can play with them and see what they're doing. So that's it about the checks. One last important thing to say about checks is that checks are not built in and engraved in stone in our software. Atmo has a plugin system, and the development of new checks is very, very easy. And if you have any specific checks that you would like to run on your data, automatable checks, ones that we can actually automate, we will be happy to build a new check for you and plug it into Atmo. With that, this is it about the checks, and our next section is on data utilities. Okay, so we're talking about data utilities. This is a quick topic. So basically, if you don't want to see some category, for example, rice cultivation, we have a British inventory now, and it's unlikely that they grow any rice in the UK. So you want to get rice cultivation out of your site, so it doesn't get in your way when you work on the inventory. You press the right mouse button on the category, click hide. So a little question here is that the system is asking you is if you want to just hide the category so it's not visible, or you want also to fill this this category, like all of the mandatory data entry cells in this category with the appropriate notation keys, namely NA and NO, basically. So if you want, you can select, check this box to fill the notation keys and click hide. That's it. We don't have rice cultivation here anymore. If you want to reveal it later, you click this little eye icon here. You select rice cultivation, you say reveal. By the way, you can see now that all of the data is basically NA or NO as the guidelines specify for it. That's one. The other data utility that we have in this evaluation version is the one to copy data. We can stay with this rice cultivation if you want. So basically, no, that's not a very good example. Let's take an example where data is actually different. So let's go to agricultural soils and copy data. And let's say we want to copy data from year 1990 to 1991. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. So we can see here that the system is telling us that no records will be copied. That's because we're at the top node of agricultural soils, and everything that is for data entry at this node is the notation keys. And the notation keys, as we already discussed, tend to be the same for all years in the same time series. So what we can do is we can select the scope as current node and all subnodes. And here we will see that 19 records will be copied, which means that under agricultural soils, you see there are direct N2O emissions, indirect N2O emissions, and so on. And like these 19 records are coming from the subnodes of this category. So everything that is happening under agricultural soils. You can choose where to copy, but also you can choose what to copy. You can choose to copy everything, like exactly the same cells. You can copy only data without comments. You can copy also only comments. That's also a possibility. Or you even can copy just the notation key explanations. That's actually an interesting feature, because sometimes notation key explanation, copying around notation key explanations is a bit of a hassle. So I can just do it, and yeah, we can see that now the years 1990 and 1991 have exactly the same values. These are calculated values, but also we can go down and we will see that all of the values that are available under this level are also exactly the same. So the data was successfully copied. And that's it. We have some other data utilities in other versions of Atmo, but in this evaluation version you have just two. You can copy data and you can hide categories. Yeah, we will be happy to provide other data utilities you may need. What I said about the plugin architecture for checks is available here as well. You can plug in and develop additional data utilities for your inventory as you need. That completes the section on the data utilities. And the next one, very exciting, is the section on charts. Hi, me again. Let's talk about charts. For any value or any numeric value that you can see in the inventory, Atmo is able to produce a time series chart. So charts are available on this graphs tab that is available at the bottom, and you can basically navigate around and look at different numeric, important to note, numeric variables that you have in your inventory. Go as deep as you need. This one is not very interesting, but this one is probably, yeah, also not very interesting. Let's find a more interesting one here. Wherever you see a numeric variable, you can build a time series chart. One important thing for the analysis is that for any time series, we are automatically creating standard deviation bands. So you can see the outliers and like by how much are they out of the average. And by the way, the number of standard deviations is also configurable. So you can say that I want to display 5 standard deviations, and you will see 5 deviation bands displayed around. Like, okay, you will not see exactly 5. You will see the minimum number of standard deviations that is enough to cover the whole time series. So it's basically a very convenient way of looking for outliers. Let me set the number of standard deviations back to 2. 2 is basically the default. Yeah, important things as well are the greenhouse gas composition at different levels in your inventory. So if you, for example, check, select line chart in gases or bar chart in gases, you will see the composition of your category. At this point, I have selected the national totals, but you can also go to energy, and it will display for you the composition of the energy sector and by greenhouse gas and some in IPPU, in industrial process, it's the most colorful situation because you see all kinds of gases that go into the composition. You can also see this composition as a relative one with percentages of different greenhouse gases contributing to the total CO2 equivalent emissions. All charts can be saved, and we're providing one vector and one bitmap format. You can have the vector image or PNG bitmap image, so you can quite easily insert your charts into print work or your reports or your national inventory report and so on, and also publish them on the web. It's quite convenient. Also, one feature that we provided in this release, I don't know if it will be very useful for you. It's a feature that we worked on with the Ukrainian government, and this is basically a bridge between the inventory and the NDC projections, and it allows you to open and connect greenhouse gas emissions projections as a file to Atmo and see not just the time series of the past, but also projections into the future according to the nationally determined contribution plan. I'm not going to show this feature in this demonstration, though. If you're interested, get in touch with us and let's see how we can attach your NDC projections to your inventory. That's all about charts, and our next section is also related to charts, and it's called the cross-country comparison. Stay tuned. Hi. Okay, so I promised you to talk about cross-country comparison. This is a very exciting topic because here we can compare how different countries perform on different inventory parameters. Cross-country comparison is done very easily. So we have United Kingdom here because this is a precision inventory. And what we are going to do is we are going to compare its HFC's emissions in ton CO2 equivalent from industrial process with the same parameters for Germany. So we can see that the emissions for the United Kingdom are higher, but the German emissions are growing as well. That's at France here. Yeah, and France is overtaking the United Kingdom. Let's add Italy. And Italy is also somehow in the ballpark. So basically, like that, you can see a comparison of different countries on practically all variables, because all of them report according to exactly the same reporting standard. So we can look at different variables, and it will show us the charts for all countries. an exciting feature, if you ask me. The important thing to note is that country data is downloaded from the internet. You don't want all of this data to be stored on your machine all the time and updated every year. So this data is being downloaded from the internet. So if you want to use this feature, your machine needs to be internet connected. That's it about cross-country comparison. Thank you. Hi. So we're going to talk about working with CRF Reporter Data. I have already mentioned that our software is fully compatible with CRF Reporter formats and metadata and data formats. We are able to work with so-called simple XML format, which is the main machine-readable format that CRF Reporter is working with. We recommend to use Atmo format to save your data and to work with it, because it's so much more compact and easy to work with. But if you need to organize interoperability with CRF Reporter, you will need to work with so-called simple XML format. So let me quickly show you how the CRF Reporter user manual that is available on the UNFCCC website is telling you to work with simple XML files. So basically, to export simple XML file, you need to go to Import Export tab in CRF Reporter, and then click XML Export on the left-hand side, and then very important, very important, in order to work with all of the data, including party-specific data, using Atmo, what you need to do is you need to check this checkbox, include party-specific metadata, well, they call it include party-specific inventory structure metadata. If you don't do that, Atmo will still work, but your country-specific variables will not be processed properly, and you may lose them when you try to import data back into the CRF Reporter. So don't forget to click this this box. You have to check this box when you are going to export simple XML. Well, actually, it doesn't matter if you just want to play around with the inventory using Atmo, but if you have a plan to import it back into the CRF Reporter, it is very important to include party-specific inventory structure method. When you are done working with your simple XML file in Atmo, you can export it. I have already shown you in the other section that you can always file, export. So it is exporting in the simple XML format. So you can always export your inventory from Atmo and use this XML import feature of the CRF Reporter to import your data back. Remember that while working in Atmo, it doesn't make a lot of sense to always export to simple XML. It's easier to work with data in Atmo format. It is simply 10 times more compact. It's easier to work with it. That's it for this section, and in the next section we will just summarize the advantages of Atmo. Hi, finally we are going to talk about the advantages of Atmo. This is the last and the only scripted part of this training, with my talking head and without software demonstration. Here, I'm going to summarize what makes Atmo stand out among other alternatives and why Atmo is a great choice for both developed and developing countries. Number one, Atmo is really fast. All alternatives are either annoyingly slow to run, depend on speed of your internet connection, or make you wait on other users. With Atmo, you don't need to wait for anyone. The software is running on your machine. It is very responsive and quick to react to your needs. Our data storage format is 10 times more compact than that of UNFCCC or IPCC softwares, which makes it quick and convenient to handle. Number two, Atmo is user-friendly. We have designed Atmo with the best user experience designers. Our goal was to provide the user interface that is as familiar as possible to the user of the most common Office packages, and at the same time make the specific tasks of inventory management easy and accessible. You can think of it as Excel that knows everything about inventory management, but in reality, it's even better. Number three, Atmo can work offline. You can work on your inventory with poor internet connection or without a connection at all. You can work on a computer or network that is locked down due to security or confidentiality reasons. You can even work on a plane. Offline work capability also means that you never wait on other users to finish their work. The work is always a priority for Atmo. Number four, Atmo is rich in features and easy to extend. We already have a feature set which is way ahead of other inventory softwares. It is not just a reporting software. Atmo supports estimations using higher tier methodologies, approach to uncertainty and key category analysis, so it's Monte Carlo simulation, and other capabilities that are not available in any other inventory product. On top of that, we have implemented a plugin architecture that enables fast and inexpensive development of customization and additional features. Number five, Atmo is the only available GHG inventory software that is easy to localize and provide in national languages. The lack of language versions of the inventory software may be the main obstacle to the improvement of data management processes in your country. We will be happy to provide Atmo in your language. Number six, Atmo is truly collaborative. Our philosophy of inventory management is that it should be a collective effort by all activity data custodians and inventory experts in your country. They should all feel the responsibility and take credit for the final result, regardless of their position in the government or industry, or their understanding of the inventory process, methods, and goals. For smaller scale activity data providers, there is a possibility to reduce Atmo interfaces to a few simplified forms. For example, a farmer would only need to enter the number of animals on their farm, and the gas station owner only the amount of gas they sold. In order to maximize collaboration and involve the maximum number of users in the process, Atmo is also offered with a per-country license that includes an unlimited number of individual installations. Number seven, Atmo is actively supported. Users receive quick and dedicated support with predictable turnaround times for any query. Continuous testing and user feedback are fed to our development team, which turns it into a stream of continuous improvements made available to all users. You should expect update and bug fix releases on a monthly basis, and the quarterly feature releases. Every user can decide when to apply the update. Nothing is forced on you, and you can organize your own testing and scheduled updates according to your pace and update policies. Number 8, we promise Atmo users a smooth transition to the Enhanced Transparency Framework and the Paris Agreement. Nobody knows so far what exactly ETF will be like, but Spherical is closely following the negotiations, and it is on top of all technical aspects involved. Whether you are a developed country working with CRF Reporter and some national systems now, or a developing country on IPCC software or Excel, we will make sure that you will transition to the ETF smoothly and will be able to deliver all necessary reporting. Number 9, a bit related to the ATF as well, Atmo is able to import data from IPCC software. According to the latest information, IPCC software will continue to be developed towards full support of 2006 IPCC guidelines, but support to ETF reporting is not planned. If your existing inventory arrangements depend on IPCC software, Atmo will help you produce ETF-compliant reporting. We can do it with or without replacing IPCC software in your workflow, but your data and work will be preserved in any case. Number 10, Atmo is cross-platform. It currently runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. The way it is built, it can be run on any other platform if there is a demand. If you are working on a Mac already, if you want to plan for a longer term, or if you have enhanced security or open source strategy in place, cross-platform is what you want. Number 11, Atmo is not just about GAG inventory and inventory management. Its data structures are flexible and extensible. Using Atmo as a platform, you can build a best-in-breed data collection and data management system for any data that you are struggling to collect in your country. We will be happy to advise how to close any data gaps that prevent you from taking informed decisions in any area of governance, and to involve and motivate the maximum number of contributors to contribute high-quality data. This is not a complete list of Atmo's advantages. We will be happy to discuss which ones are the most relevant to you. Get in touch with us and let's start building a better future together.